Sakamoto might seem like just your average slightly good-looking dude, but trust me, this guy is much more than that. After getting everyone's attention from day one of his journey at Gakubun Prefectural High, watch as Sakamoto lives an overwhelmingly cool life, leaving an imprint of his style on everyone's minds. Sakamoto just started his high school journey, but he had already become the fantasy of pretty much every single girl at school. Sakamoto's extraordinary elegance in everything that he does makes a lot of guys jealous, and after a group of 3 dudes fail at coping with the severe inferiority complex that they're having, Atsushi, Kenken, and Mario decide to somehow catch the guy lacking. They start off with setting the most cliché trap you would expect from Japanese high schoolers. That obviously doesn't work on Sakamoto, but instead increases his fanbase. The mischievous group then proceeds to try and dump water on Sakamoto in the toilet, but they fail to realize that Sakamoto is just inhuman, as he had already thought this ahead. Atsushi's group finally decides to get violent after nothing was going their way, and they succeed in luring Sakamoto to a storage room where they restrain him for attempted humiliation. The boys get into a little trouble when a small fire starts in the storage room. Sakamoto's elegance leads him to swiftly use his elite rapid sidesteps that do nothing to the fire really, but instead look interesting enough that the other boys end up trying it out. After a teacher arrives, Atsushi and company turn into Sakamoto's fans as well, when he takes the whole blame and saves the others from getting into trouble. Even outside the school, Sakamoto is equally perfect, as even a rainstorm is not enough to stop him when he literally flies in the air with the help of a typhoon to save a random bird that he had found on the way. Sakamoto does not stop to assert dominance over the other males around when his latest trip to the sky ends up in the newspapers and gets him even more popular. After the recent trio, a guy named Sarah decides to stand in Sakamoto's way by pulling his chair from under him. But of course, such a measly trick could never work on Mr. Perfect, as he easily sits down without even needing a chair. Sarah's jealousy continues to grow as some time passes, but every single one of his attempts ends up in vain as Sakamoto just pulls out a way to impress the crowd. Poor Sarah decides to give up in the end as he takes the road to become a comedian, wishing to pair up with Sakamoto, but Sakamoto humbly declines as a man like him needs no partner. On a usual day, stylish Sakamoto was on a trip to feed the bird when he just happened to see his classmate Kubota getting bullied by some guys. Goes out of his way to check up on him afterwards, and as Kubota is trying to gain some sympathy, Sakamoto decides to leave him on his own. Kubota ends up mentioning that he has no money, and his cry for help reaches Sakamoto, who later takes him alongside to get both of them jobs at the local restaurant. Being the cool guy gets Sakamoto the position of the guy at the cash register, while Kubota ends up doing the cleaning and backstage stuff. Sakamoto doesn't stop leaving people impressed, and even Kubota, who was quite bored with the job, starts to get comfortable with working here as the payday comes close. Kubota is quite happy as it is finally payday, but his happiness disappears when the school bullies catch him working at a restaurant. The trauma of being bullied starts to overtake Kubota, and later at the park, he is about to hand over his hard-earned money yet again, but Sakamoto's advice stands in the way. Kubota manages to turn the bullies down for once, which does earn him some beating, but that is only until Sakamoto arrives to help his co-worker out. With some slick moves, Sakamoto provides Kubota with an opportunity, and Kubota utilizes it completely to make the dudes run away after realizing just how crazy these two are. After successfully dragging Kubota out of misery, Sakamoto was busy polishing his academic life when a popular girl named Aina seemed to have taken quite a liking to him. Despite the vast availability of guys in class, Aina ends up getting fixated on getting close to Sakamoto, and her attempts look sly to a couple of other girls named Yaki and Tanaka. Aina was quite proud of her skills with guys, and she decided to try out every single trick that she had in her book, just to get close to Sakamoto. Aina's ego kind of starts hurting after Sakamoto just straight up avoids anything even close to closeness, but she decides give it another go after school, asking Sakamoto to play a game of Kokuri. Sakamoto declines, as expected, but since the girls from earlier had requested to join the two, Sakamoto declares to watch over the game. The game begins, and as every single girl is trying to get her name close to Sakamoto's, the coin drops down and a spirit possesses Sakamoto. The girls are unable to see Sakamoto in a non-stylish state, and they build an arch to bring the original cool Sakamoto back. The day ends with no romantic progress for any of the three girls, but they do find a new friend to get along with. Sakamoto turns out to be the mastermind behind bringing the girls together in the end, as he was just curious about the way human nature acts. The school life for some first years got a little hard, as the guys who were bullying around ended up getting bossed by a second year named Maruyama. The senior had also managed to get Sakamoto as his errand boy, and of course, Sakamoto over-delivers his sublime services. Even Kubota was able to tell that Sakamoto was being used by Maruyama, but for some reason, Mr. Perfect decides to completely dedicate himself to Maruyama as his errand boy. A few days passed by, and Maruyama ended up short on errands for Sakamoto to run. Sakamoto's excellence had gotten Maruyama extremely lazy, and he just decided to leave the orders for Sakamoto to decide as well. Even though the senior was really happy initially, as he didn't know what exactly he had gotten himself into. Sakamoto picks up the pace, and the situation turns around pretty quickly, as now the bully Maruyama was the one being bullied. Sakamoto lands the final blow by literally preparing a bed for after PE rest, and this much service gives Maruyama's brain a hard reset, making him do things on his own yet again. Sakamoto had the intelligence to back his actions as well, since his grades were just as good as his looks. On the contrary, Kubota was barely passing exam, so on his request, Sakamoto agreed to help him out with some private lessons. The lessons went pretty well, but Sakamoto messes up a little when he makes Kubota's mom fall for him. To save his friend, Kubota tries to keep the study sessions going by hiding Sakamoto from his mom, but one day, Kubota messes up big time as he heads back to school to get his textbook, leaving Sakamoto alone. Miss Kubota's female senses were a bit too good as she figured out that Sakamoto had been coming to their place pretty quickly. The lady goes on her hunt to sniff Sakamoto out, but Sakamoto was never really easy to catch in the first place. After countless attempts, Mrs. Kubota ends up sitting down to watch a DVD that gives the Sakamoto just the opportunity he wanted. With some of the most meticulous timing and athleticism, Sakamoto convinces the lady that he never really existed in the first place, and from that day onward, the boys just decided to study at the library instead. Students were not the only ones who were trying to somehow make Sakamoto trip, as the school PE teacher, Kakuta, was quite pissed at how Sakamoto kept dodging him with a new type of sleek trick every single time. Kakuta was pretty anxious for doing something about the situation on his part, until he realizes that he is actually a teacher and starts to find a way to catch Sakamoto while breaking the rules in any way. Kakuta-sensei assumed that this wouldn't be that difficult, but it turns out that he was just not aware of things Sakamoto is capable of. After failing to find something in the cleaning time, Kakuta is busy with the health class as Sakamoto is having a 5-star lunch in the back. The sensei finally thinks that he got something to use against Sakamoto, but he quickly comes to know about how Sakamoto was just plotting the lunch to help a bird out, which makes Kakuta burst into tears. Apart from perfection in every single one of his movements, as if he is dancing, Sakamoto turns out to be equally good at cooking as well when he continues to impress the girls in cooking class by elegantly dealing with a slug that was found on the cabbages while preparing some exquisite food. The prowess continues even in the art class when Aina partners up with Sakamoto and makes every single girl jealous. When poor Kubota was drawing himself, Sakamoto draws a picture of Aina that, even though looks like that of a monkey at first, leaves every single girl envious when Aina views it the correct way. Sakamoto's sophistication continues as he grows more onto the whole school, risking his life to save Atsushi's when a fire started in school before making his cinematic exit. Sometime later, as the summer holidays were just around the corner, Atsushi's group decided to play a little prank on Sakamoto by making him fall into a hole they had dug. Even though the plan surprisingly works out at first, Atsushi and the company really start to regret this decision as Sakamoto is nowhere to be seen for multiple weeks. Tension starts to build up, and during their search operation, Atsushi's group realizes that Sakamoto had been doing every single thing they could think of before it had even come to their mind. The trio ends up returning to the same hole they dug in the park after not finding Sakamoto anywhere. The hole was quite deeper than the boys had left it, and the sign of Sakamoto makes the group believe that he had gone straight to Brazil through this hole. Atsushi ends up jumping into the hole as well, looking for Sakamoto, but just when he had gotten really sad about Sakamoto leaving him behind, Mr. Perfect pulls up on the boys to lead them towards greatness again. On a new day, Sakamoto is maintaining his legacy by garnering female attention yet again, when he mistakenly throws a ball right at Kubota's face. Kubota gets a nosebleed, so being the generous man he is, Sakamoto tears his own uniform to show off that six-pack and also gives Kubota some first aid. Later on, after the PE lecture, Sakamoto is busy with his usual routine when Maruyama ends up feeling the effects of the trauma Sakamoto inflicted on him. Seeing Maruyama tremble like this doesn't fit right with his mate Hayabusa, who decides to confront Sakamoto while he was busy in class. The senior tells Sakamoto to lend him his face, but Sakamoto takes it literally and gives him a mold of his model face. The girls obviously go crazy at the possibility of having Sakamoto Jr., but it gives Hayabusa the wrong idea that Sakamoto is trying to hurt him. Hayabusa challenges Sakamoto to meet at the riverbank before walking out, but Sakamoto has more important things to do, so he humbly declines. The guy had gotten to the delinquents' heads, so the minions decided to get back at him somehow, and they attempted to piss him off by doing things like hiding his shoes. Sakamoto doesn't even bother to worry about something so pathetic, and even hiding Mr. Smith doesn't piss Sakamoto off. Mr. Smith is Sakamoto's ruler, by the way. Moving on, the minions decide to target Kubota next, and they go as far as shaving his head off. Seeing Kubota suffer makes Sakamoto angry for real, and he heads to confront Hayabusa after giving Kubota a makeshift wig. The guys gather at the riverbank, but just when they were about to fight, a policeman catches the students, telling them to stop. The fight ends up turning into a game of push sumo with the policeman, as the spectator and Sakamoto shows the complete intention of winning by any means. The match is starting to get serious, and just when the minions accept that they were trying to get back at Sakamoto on their own, Sakamoto delivers the killer blow and pushes Hayabusa into the taxi he had called. Hayabusa is left shocked after witnessing the caliber of a man Sakamoto is, and as Sakamoto is taking the others back, he tells them to apologize to Kubota as well. The delinquents give in, and they head over to Kubota's to make up and give him some seaweed to grow his hair quickly. The next day brings some consequences of the fight in the rain for Sakamoto, as he ends up getting a fever. Even though the nurse was quite happy about how Sakamoto will stay around her in the infirmary, Sakamoto doesn't let something like a fever stand in his way, as he decides to wear a green union tie instead. I have no clue why he did that either. Anyway, Sakamoto is on his usual way to school when some elementary school boys end up watching his exquisite skills in kicking the rock through the crowd. The leader of the little group decides to pick a battle against Sakamoto to see who's better at the game. But when the kids couldn't handle their rocks on a slanted road, Sakamoto blew their minds by literally walking on a wall horizontally. The boys start developing an interest towards the sophisticated Sakamoto as they begin to play a game of following the line behind him. The kids follow Sakamoto's footsteps and walk quite a long distance while constantly getting impressed by Sakamoto. A little hurdle arrived in front of our group when the line they were following ended, but after seeing the boys interested, Sakamoto prefers to not let the kids down as he literally makes his own line to follow with the help of some toilet paper. The challenges conclude when the group reaches the convenience store, and the day concludes with Sakamoto inspiring another individual on how to live life. We stray away from Sakamoto's perfectionism for a little while and meet the representative of Class 1/2 named Megumi. Megumi might seem like a normal girl, but ever since Sakamoto's enrollment, she had developed the hobby of stalking Sakamoto. Megumi had just finished her usual Sakamoto photo session when she realized that there was a ghost on her idol's trail. Being unable to show the photos up front, Megumi begins a quest to give hints to Sakamoto, while Sakamoto just straight up dodges the ghost every single time without even noticing what he just did. Megumi decides to have a word with Kubota, who reveals how Sakamoto has transcended to the point where the book he is reading turns its pages on its own. Megumi somehow escapes Kubota's life counseling, and she realizes that she is just like the ghost as well, who is staying in the shadows, after watching Aina, who, as opposed to her, shows affection up front. A switch flips in Megumi's head, and she prints some fresh photos to convey the ghost message to Sakamoto. Even though Megumi assumes that Sakamoto just took her for a fool, after seeing Sakamoto reply to the ghost in the same way, Megumi upgrades to the official position of Sakamoto's photographer, and the ghost stops appearing afterwards. A decent time frame had passed ever since Sakamoto enrolled as the first year, and by this time, even though he had left quite the impression on Atsushi and the company, this trio still wanted to do another adventure, as their next goal was to acquire some DVDs from the store's adult section. The boys were assuming that this task would be pretty much impossible until they saw a ray of hope in the form of Sakamoto, who arrived with Aina and her friends. The girls were interested in what Sakamoto is going to rent, until he remarks that he is looking for a documentary on birds. Sakamoto's elite taste and content doesn't matter to the girls, as they just wanted to spend time with him, but he still manages to excuse himself for a while. Atsushi's group sees the golden opportunity and decides to blackmail Sakamoto into doing the deed for them if he wishes to have the DVD he came here for. The documentary turns out to be really important to Sakamoto, as the guy accepts the mission impossible and uses some delicate footwork to sweep the stuff without getting spotted. The hard part of the mission arrives, as in order to reach the cashier, the trio directs Sakamoto on how to dodge the girls. Sakamoto still does get caught, but he is just too smooth to be stopped at this point. He sees the counter, but before heading there, writes something on his wrist. The store ups the level when the boss himself pulls up on the counter. With a poker face and some bluffs, Sakamoto succeeds in dominating the battle of wits with the boss after flashing his expensive watch, securing the DVDs for Atsushi's group. After the adventure had concluded for now, Atsushi's group offers Sakamoto to join them, but seeing him walk away unfazed makes the trio realize that they absolutely need to improve themselves as men instead of wasting time like this. After dropping yet another guidance bomb on his fellow students, Sakamoto continues his high school journey while maintaining his sublime presence to win many more hearts, just like he won ours. And that would be it for today's recap. Comment down below if you guys wanted part 2. And if you enjoyed it, drop us a like and subscribe to our channel for more, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.